Mike Pompeo is currently ensnared in a cycle of negative news coverage because of the typically corrupt behavior we are used to seeing from the Trump administration. Trump at the top, the head crook, and then one minion after another involved in one form or another of dishonesty and malfeasance. Pompeo is the latest caught misusing taxpayer dollars. Do you remember private jet Tom Price, or secure phone booth Scott Pruitt, or European travel Scott Shulkin, Ryan Zinke? Well, these guys are gone. The ones still there, Ben Carson, Robert Lighthizer, and Steve Mnuchin, have all been linked to lavish personal spending on the taxpayer's dime. It's just that Trump hasn't fired them yet. An inspector general was looking into allegations that Pompeo had been using government employees to run personal errands, and that he had been setting up lavish dinners complete with harpists as a way of cultivating his own political future. He would invite wealthy business leaders, Republican political figures, and conservative media personalities to cultivate his 2024 presidential run. And apparently, even though Congress, in a bipartisan resolution, has been against the sale of arms to Saudi Arabia, Pompeo has been in cahoots with Trump, trying to cut the deal anyway. And bottom line, he asked Trump to fire the inspector general, which Trump did, and here we are. In his chart transits, you can see right away the two factors that are correlating with the situation he's in. First, we would say Uranus transiting square Venus. Venus is in his 10th of his career and reputation, and it rules the ascendant, the Taurus ascendant, which makes it a crucial planet. And remember that this chart has an exact birth time. He's born in California. They make records public there, so we have access to the charts of California births. And that, of course, also puts Saturn directly on the degrees of the midheaven, which you would never know unless you had a proper time. And I think that very much adds to it, because Saturn is the great accountant. If you haven't been up to good things, Saturn is going to call you on it. And so his first problem is that Saturn is going to be there at least until July. Not quite as precise as it is now, because this whole thing blew up right on the Saturn station, which happened to correlate with his MC degrees. But nevertheless, until Saturn backtracks into Capricorn, which it will do in July, he is at some risk. The problem he has is that Uranus doesn't really stop pressuring this Venus the rest of the year. It will move forward up into the 10-degree range, but that's still more than close enough to put pressure on this Venus. And essentially what happens is it moves forward into the 10-plus area and then returns to these degrees right around election time. So what does this mean? There is some potential for him to lose his job. There is enough there, no question. But the heat on this chart is nowhere near what Trump is feeling. And I would say on balance, he's likely to escape being fired before the end of the year, unless, of course, it becomes advantageous to Trump for some reason. And with Trump, everything is basically tilted to whatever his interests are. So that's a possibility, and you could say, yes, there's enough here for that to happen. My best guess, though, is that what is going to happen is, as Saturn recedes backward into Capricorn, he'll likely fade into the background as a major problem, so to speak. However, because when we get into the election season, this Uranus tightens its grip on the Venus, and it's pretty close to an exact square as the voting happens. I'm guessing that this is yet another indicator of the kind of outcome that the entire administration isn't going to be happy with, namely, taking a beating in November of 2020. The lines I've drawn show Uranus as a fairly supportive planet, sextile the moon, trine the sun. That's quite good. These quincunxes toward Venus and Jupiter, however, are more problematic and are probably why it is causing him, or rather correlating with a period of time that is difficult. And of course, Saturn, there's no question, you put Saturn in transit on an angle, and it comes at birth over here from direct square to the horizon. So this planet will call you on your misdeeds. And we can look back, in fact, and notice that in 2019, Saturn was transiting over Mercury and Mars during the Ukraine scheme. First, it was a little earlier than these degrees when they were cooking it up, and Pompeo had to be aware of it because later he was on the call and listened to the whole thing and cooperated with Trump. But if you recall, he was pretty ensnared in that whole scandal, and all through the late summer and fall, as Saturn went through these degrees, things were pretty rough for Pompeo. The State Department was looking awful. He was accused of not supporting his employees. And the general picture we all got to see was of a department in disarray with multiple agendas playing out at the same time, and a leader that didn't seem particularly interested in following the rule of law, and especially of supporting the people that worked for him. So 2019, pretty much until the end of the year, was hard on Pompeo in that sense, and that was with Saturn in this area. Then, as Saturn left those degrees, things went into the background pretty much until it got to the degrees of his MC. And then, once again, he's facing bad news. I have to say that this idea that he has of becoming president in 2024 would seem to me to be a bit of a pipe dream. My sense is whoever gets near Trump is going to be damaged irreparably. And anything is possible. That's a long time away. Who knows what will be happening then? My best guess is that this man's chart, particularly the Saturn, being an elevated planet, being a planet that is famous for its connections to calling you on what you've done. It's a very karmic planet. So now his reputation has been damaged. And once that's happened, it's hard to come back from. I'll finish by commenting on the nature of a chart that shows a great deal of ambition. Notice that the north node is next to the moon, the south node, not shown here, but it's near the sun. Nodal connections to a full moon, which is effectively what this is, make for a great deal of ambition. In fact, Trump has a full moon as well, and he has the nodes near the sun and moon as well. Reversed in his case, the south is here and the north is there, but same idea. So this is very ambitious, and as far as that goes, that's good. At the same time, you see the arrogance and the excess by way of the Jupiter over here, squaring the moon, squaring the sun. Jupiter is a great planet, but once it starts to manifest the dark side of the archetype, which is basically excess, a planet that is connected to expansion and growth and optimism can go too far. When you put it in squares, that's exactly what happens. In fact, it's why Pompeo is seen as entitled and arrogant. And let's face it, he's a portly man, which is another sign of an excessive Jupiter. Jupiter in the 12th, ruling the 8th, and assessing the way he has been doing things, to me looks like a conduit for shady dealings and even potential criminality, which is a reflection of the sad state of affairs our country is in when this is our current Secretary of State and was formerly the head of the CIA. I'll finish by pointing to the Neptune here, because by being 1 degree from the horizon means that it's the last planet to have crossed an angle prior to his birth, therefore strongly imprints into his personality. Neptune has the potential to be the most selfless, and in that sense the most truly democratic planetary influence. But that's only if the overall nature of the chart points it in that direction, and you might have thought it would have, given the nature of Neptune and being so prominent in this chart, and maybe at some point in his life this guy held those ideals. I don't think he's there anymore. I think he's a total Trump sellout. This chart is all ambition now, and Neptune gets corralled into, the deceptive, dishonest behavior that Neptune will display if one lets it go to the dark end. And so, yes, it trines the moon, which is very nice, sextiles these Capricorn planets, but then it also squares Saturn. And this man's expression of public service, to my mind, is pretty corrupt.